You may know our next guest from his battles with Anderson Silva, Yushin Okami, Brian Stan, Michael Bisping, Nate Marquardt, and many more. You can catch him weekly on his podcast, You're Welcome, via Podcast One. See him on ESPN, Global Force Wrestling, and now he is the new addition to World Series of Fighting, the commentating team. It's a pleasure to welcome the American gangster himself, Chael Sonnen, to Submission Radio.
What is happening, gentlemen?
It's a big pleasure to have you on. I've wanted to have you on the show for quite a long time. Let's talk about this. You're the new color commentator for World Series of Fighting. Tell us about the gig. How did all this come about? And how long can we expect you, to be doing color commentary for World Series of Fighting?
Boy, are they lucky to have me. What an incredible treat that must be. Listen, this is great. I have been friends with those guys for some time. I went to their first ever show. I went as a fan. Their first show was out in Las Vegas. I'm trying to remember where we went. I think we went to the Palms. That might not be right, but at any rate, had a great time. I've always enjoyed the show, and I'm glad they're sticking around. They're making some big gains, man. They're out here in America on a network, a little small network called NBC. Maybe you've heard of it.
Yeah, kind of, just a little bit.
Sounds familiar, Chael. And I mean, you picked a good time to join the company, seeing as your first event will be World Series of Fighting 23, which features a rematch between Justin Gaethje and Luis Palomino. Considering how crazy the first fight was, how happy are you that you'll be in the best seat in the house to watch the action?
Well, I love it. I'm a big fan. I'm a fan in front of everything else. That's how I started in MMA, was just as a fan that would buy the pay-per-views with my dad and some friends. So, I love it. And I also love rematches. I love title fights, I love grudge matches, and I love rematches. Those are the three big things that I find the most attractive. So, I think it is going to be great. And you're right, I will have a good seat in the house.
It's going to be pretty decent. We're just wondering, who are you going to be sitting next to? Is it going to be the duo of yourself and Todd Harris, or will Bus Rutten be joining you guys as well?
No, I'll be working with Todd Harris.
All right. Well, that's going to be pretty exciting. Now, you've done analyst work before as well as commentary, but considering how long you competed for, just wondering, is it tough being on the other side of the cage watching people compete instead of competing yourself?
No, it's a lot more fun. The actual fun. Nobody likes to fight. Everybody that says they do, they're lying. Fighters are just like the most notorious liars that I've ever been around. But that is one of the big myths that they put out, that I love to fight. It's everything that goes into it that keeps it seductive and attractive. The build-up and the training, being in the gym with the guys, spending time with your coaches and sacrificing and going through all those things that give you a sense of achievement. The fight itself is the worst part of the experience. So, man, I enjoy it. I like being on the commentary side. I really enjoy the action. I enjoy the development of the skills and strategies. It's hard to believe that this sport is still growing as fast as it is, and I mean that from a technical standpoint. But I can see it really well, particularly when I'm trying to call the action and break it down. There's some real guys that fight like chess players, and they're a step ahead. And when guys set somebody up and it works, it's an impressive thing.
Well, speaking of your mic work, it seems as though many people are trying to emulate your success via self-promotion and being opportunistic when there's a microphone in front of them. In many ways, you were the pioneer of that in your feud against a guy called Anderson Silva, and many MMA fighters have been playing catch-up since. What do you think about that notion, Chael?
Well, yeah, I've seen a lot of guys, try to take from what I was doing, and good for them. If somebody does something and it works, you should go copy it. It's the easiest way to success that there is. And so many people don't. Even when I was going through my run, I sold more tickets, more pay-per-views, and more T-shirts than anybody in the history of that company. And I would come out and tell people that. People would say, I don't like the way Chael Sonnen promotes a fight. And I would say, guys, I'm the biggest draw in this industry. Are you really sure that I'm the guy you want to question? And for a while, I was. I was the guy they wanted to question. And then over time, I became the guy that they wanted to emulate. And it's like Marshall Mathers once said, gentlemen, they might walk like me, talk like me, dress, act, and not give a dang like me, and they just might be the next best thing, but they're not quite me.
Nice wrap there from Chael Sonnen. Another thing that you can add to the list of things that you do well. Now, Casper mentioned Anderson Silva. We just wanted to get your thoughts, Chael. You know, we haven't been able, obviously, to interview you before. What do you think about this whole Anderson Silva suspension and the way his defense handled the whole situation? Obviously, there was a bit of hilarity involved about some of the excuses that they used. What did you think about the whole way that the whole thing was handled?
Gentlemen, the cover-up is always worse than the crime. What Anderson Silva did, this is my mortal enemy. I hate this guy, okay? I still give him a full pass. I cannot look at what he did as an objective person, looking at his leg, going, listen, your leg snapped in two pieces, okay? You owed it to yourself. You owed it to your family to heal that leg. Whether you had to go to the free market or the black market, it doesn't make any difference to me. I'm really impressed that you found something to heal your leg. Now, he could have then been a good guy about it. He could have come out and said, yeah, as a matter of fact, here's how I did it. So anybody else in my spot, let me walk you through what I did. That would have been the cool thing to do. But, you know, he got scared about it. And those guys don't understand those tests. They're pass or fail. And everybody that ends up in the hot seat, and I've been in that seat. I mean, I'm telling you guys the psychology of somebody that got in the same jam. Your first line of defense is to explain how it got in your set. Well, how it got there doesn't make a damn bit of difference. It doesn't make any difference how it got there. It was either there or it wasn't. It's pass or fail. And, you know, the commission slapped him on the wrist, but the way he went about it historically is what would get you the book thrown at you. You know, it's the guys that dig in. It's the guys that lie about it that always get the worst treatment. The guys that come forward and say, listen, you got me, here's what happened. Those are the guys that kind of get the Anderson treatment. So he had the best of both worlds there. He had a great fairy tale of a story, and he didn't get punished for it. So good for him.
Well, he's suspended now. I mean, while on the topic of suspended fighters, we've been wanting to ask you this since your Reddit AMA. Obviously, we've been wanting to, like we mentioned, we wanted to get you on the show for quite a while, so there's still a lot of things that we have to ask. In that Reddit AMA, you predicted multiple times that the John Jones Anthony Rumble Johnson fight wasn't going to happen. You know, I'm just curious because you've been sort of becoming the MMA Nostradamus. What exactly made you say that and predict that the fight wasn't going to happen?
Well, I knew that fight wasn't going to happen, and I should never say I know that. I was quite sure that fight was never going to happen. I was at ESPN, and we were supposed to do a video package for it about 2 months before the fight. And I just said, guys, let's circle back to this. And they said, well, no, you're here now. You know, we don't want to fly you back in. Let's just get it all done at once. And I just said, guys, you are wasting your time. Don't rent that studio. That fight is never going to happen. And they asked me too. They kept saying, well, why do you say that? I said, guys, just trust me, that fight ain't going to happen. And I've never revealed what would have gotten in the way of that fight. And I'm still not going to do it today, guys. But that fight was never going to happen.
Let me ask you something, Chael. Were there any other situations since then when a fight's been announced that you've told the ESPN team, hey, I don't think that fight's going to happen? Or is this the first time that you've sort of felt this way about a fight?
No, that's the one and only. That's the one and only time that I would actually put my name on it and come out and say it. You know, I think that having faith in this McGregor Aldo alleged fight coming up, I think that's tough. You know, that you're putting a lot of faith into that. If Aldo wanted to do it, he could have done it. He could have done it a month ago. So I think that's a tough one. I think that I'm obviously not the only one that thinks that. That's why that weekend and that card is so star loaded. They're ready for that one to fall out. But I sure hope it happens. I want to see the fight, and I think Aldo's a lot better than Aldo thinks he is. I think that Aldo's got the skills to win it. It's kind of hard to believe he's going to win a fight that he doesn't think he can win. But when I look at those two, I think he's the better fighter. But apparently he doesn't agree with me.
Why is that? Why don't you think Aldo believes in himself?
I haven't the foggiest idea. There's a lot of great athletes that go through that, but a guy like Jose Aldo, who hasn't lost in 11 years, he's fought the best of the best. You know, I don't know what got him so rattled. I mean, he clearly is. He just walked out of a press conference a couple of weeks ago. He was so frustrated. So, you know, it's really hard. It's really hard to imagine. For me, Aldo might be the best fighter out there, pound for pound. in the absence of George St. Pierre and in the absence of John Jones, I don't even know if there's an argument for it. I think it just defaults to Aldo. When those guys are present, he still might be the best. It just then there's an argument. So I really don't know. Mentally, he did not like that. He did not like getting picked on and getting a finger put in his chest, and I don't know why any of that would bother him. I did that stuff to Anderson. It rattled him too and threw him off, and he refused to fight me. And I was privately thinking, well, what do you care? It's a press conference. I'm not going to hit you, you chicken.
Let me ask you about UFC 193. It's obviously an event that we're very excited for here in Melbourne, Australia. It's going to be at Etihad Stadium to a possible crowd of 70,000 people. But obviously the new main event, Ronda Rousey versus Holly Holm, is something that's making Aussies go crazy. Everybody's very excited. Now, you have a very interesting opinion about the validity of Holly Holm being a multiple-time world champion. You've spoken about it a little bit on your show before. Can you just explain to the listeners your thoughts on her accolades? Because they mentioned that she's a multiple-time boxing world champion.
It's the only thing that's holding her back. You need the mandate of a few people. You need the mandate of the bosses, the guys on the second floor at the UFC. You need the mandate of the fans, but you also need the support of the people in the locker room. The fellow fighters kind of have to step aside for somebody to be the number one contender and go, okay, yeah, you're the right person. Holly is gaining some fan support, and as far as the locker room goes, we can't get behind her because she's not telling the truth. That there is no validity that I'm willing to sign off on, and I'm happy for someone to come in and disagree with me. Tell me where I'm wrong, but there is no validity to any of her world championships, let alone some ridiculous claim of being a 17-time world champion. I mean, guys, I could go open the door to my garage right now, invite all comers, and then put a belt around whoever wins and call it the World Championship. And, I mean, that kind of stuff happens all the time. You see it in arm wrestling. There's a World Championship for some game called cornholing, which is like some Midwest version of horseshoes. There's World Championships for thumb wrestling. And there's no validity to this stuff. There's no validity to her being a 17-time world champion. And I don't believe as an analyst that there's any validity to her, zero of her championships. I don't know one tournament that she ever entered where the entire planet was welcome to enter, and they whittled it down with a competitive architecture known as a bracket, and one person was left standing. I don't know of it. And I've been making this claim for a while, wanting somebody to disagree with me. Wanting Holly to disagree with me, or one of her coaches to come out and go, Chael, you don't know what you're talking about. It's never happened. She's got the thumb wrestling world championship from some dude's garage. That's just the reality. I do think she's a skilled fighter. I think she's a good boxer. I don't know if that matters. I'm 38 years old. I've never met a female boxer, not one. I've traveled the world. I've seen damn near every continent and every country. I've been to every state in America. I've never reached across the table and shaken hands with a woman that turned out she was a boxer. So, are you the best boxer in the world for females? Maybe. Does that mean you beat about 3 people? Yeah, it does. And I'm not discrediting her. I'm discrediting boxing. Boxing's a dying breed, man. People ask me this about Floyd Mayweather all the time. Is he the greatest boxer ever? He's certainly the best of this time, and he's certainly a fantastic athlete, and he should get a lot more credit than he does. But nobody boxes, guys. The same way I said I've never met a girl that boxes, I was 28 years old when I met my first boxer. Mm-hmm. Clayton Hires was the first man I ever met who had been in the ring and competed in boxing. Not one of these liars that goes down to the gym and jumps rope for 3 minutes and then goes and gets some more. I'm talking about a guy that gets in the ring on Saturday night and boxes another man. I was 28 years old when I met my first one of those. The sport doesn't exist. So who cares if you're the best at it?
That's definitely an interesting take, Chael. Now, I'm going to skip ahead because obviously this interview can't go on forever, and there's still a few things to cover. We want to get your thoughts on something big in the current MMA landscape. What do you think about Fedor Emelianenko returning to MMA? Do you think he can be competitive against the elite heavyweights in the world upon his return?
No, Fedor's terrible. And Fedor is a very nice guy. I had the pleasure to meet him twice. Mm-hmm. The first time I was in line with him at a Starbucks in a hotel in Los Angeles, and he just blended in. He was just a chubby bald guy with a nerdy sweater waiting for his latte like everybody else. And I thought, what a nice guy. The reality on Fedor is if you're not fighting in a commissioned fight, you're not fighting in a real fight. It has to be a sanctioned commissioned fight. This comes right back to what we're talking about with Holly and her quadrillion boxing championships. If there's no sanctioning and there's no credibility in architecture, then it doesn't count. So everything he did in Japan with a referee wearing an earpiece gets thrown out. You got to come to the States where there's an official weigh-in, where there's a regulatory body, and where there's clear and defined rules with clear and defined judging. He did that. He did that 6 times, and he went 3-3. That's not exactly an impressive record for a guy that we all keep having to hear is the best of all time. Now, God bless him. I love a guy that can come back, but I can tell you firsthand, you don't get better not doing something. Fedor got destroyed by guys who are now getting destroyed. Fedor got destroyed by Bigfoot Silva, who, by my last count, has fought. I believe Frank Mir knocked him out in 18 seconds. I suppose I'd have to rewatch that. But the point is that it's ridiculous. I think it will sell once. I know that I'll tune in. I know that the UFC is going to greatly overpay for him. And good for Fedor, man. I think he did everything right. And he is a nice guy. This isn't my goal to come out and bash a guy, but look, if a guy's terrible, a guy's terrible. He's 3-3 in the States. That means he's 3-3.
Let me ask you, Chael, because a lot of the big sort of debaters, now that a lot of the heavyweight division doesn't use TRT, obviously when he fought Bigfoot Silva, he was on TRT, he was a little bit of a different athlete. Do you give him more of a chance now that the division is a lot more clean?
Yeah, and I'll let you be the first to actually get your vernacular right. There's no such thing as TRT. It's just T. It is just testosterone. You'll never go buy a bottle of something that says TRT on it. But you can get the first letter. You can get the T down. So I can tell you. And again, you're talking to a guy that used it. So I mean, let me tell you firsthand, it makes a difference. It helps. It is a performance enhancer. If I thought it was going to de-hance me, I never would have taken it. So, yes, that matters, but not as much as a lot of people think. And the field was pretty level. In my experience with the testosterone era, I was one of the few guys that came out, did it right, publicly said I was on it, and went and got the exemptions. When I did that, I had no idea there was going to be a backlash. I had no idea that people were going to say, man, that's a loophole, or anything else I dealt with. And when that happened, everybody else just said, you know what, I'm going to do this too, but I'm not going to disclose it. I'm not going to do what Chael did and make myself subject to public ridicule. And when that happened, that's when guys started getting in trouble. So the guys you're talking about that were taking the testosterone and admitted it, the only difference between them and their opponents, for the most part, is they admitted it.
Well, let me just go back to you for a second, Chael, because with Fedor coming back...
Stay on me, gentlemen. This show is doing huge ratings right now.
Yeah, calls are calling in, doing our biggest ratings ever. With Fedor coming back, he always seemed like one of the least likeliest guys to come out of retirement. So it begs the question, once your suspension is up, do you ever see yourself returning to active competition?
No, I wouldn't fight again, but I do like to compete. I've been doing some grappling events. I considered trying out for the 2016 Olympics. I began that process. I gave up on the drip, but I mean, this was at one point I had begun that process. They actually moved the date. They moved the date of the tournament up 6 months. And it just wasn't a realistic time frame. But I have been able to compete in some grappling, and I was going to go out to Abu Dhabi, and that didn't line up. But I have a next opponent for an event called Metamoris. I just found out about it, got that locked down. So I have a match coming up at the very end of October. Might even be November 1st. Now I'd have to look. But so I do have some competitions, but I won't be taking part in the free format fighting systems.
Yeah, certainly. You can't share with us your opponent just yet, can you, Chael?
Sure.
What is your opponent's name at the next Metamoris?
His name is Josh Barnett.
Oh, wow. That's going to be a huge
Holy shit.
match. We'll have to get you back on down the track, just talk about that separately. Now, before we wrap up with a tap-out round.
And I'll even give you gentlemen a prediction.
Okay.
Don't say the fight's not going to happen.
Sonnen wins.
Sonnen wins, okay.
Wow.
I'm going to take his fat ass down, and he will never get up. And let him know I said that.
All right. Well, we're going to have to text him personally. That's amazing. We can't wait for that matchup. That's Metamoris, a fantastic company. Now, before we wrap up the interview with the tap out round, Chael, there
I'm
was
going to take Josh Barnett down, and then I'm going to whisper in his ear, welcome to the next 20 minutes of your life.
Wow. It's almost like Brock Lesnar welcoming people to Suplex City. It's going to be amazing. Now, Chael, before we wrap up the interview with that tap out round, just one last question. You famously told the story of how you promised your father on his deathbed that you would become the UFC champion. You even joked about moving down to featherweight and beating Jose Aldo. Is that something that bothers you, eats away at you, that you were that close to the title, but you never quite got it?
Oh man, it's the only promise I told him that I never kept. That was it. Other than that, I was a man of my word, and I did my damnedest, man. I ran that race as hard as I could, but yeah, that bothers me a lot. I had another match that bothered me and haunted me for years and years and years, and so when I had the Anderson match, the bad news was then that one started haunting me, but the good news is I haven't thought about that other match since. So I guess that's just the way it goes, you know. And I'm kind of pessimistic in that regard. I prefer to remember the negative over the positive, which is unfortunate. It's just how my mind works. But it's also kind of served to drive me a little bit a different direction. So, you know, the thing with competitions, I tried as hard as I could in preparation for a match. And on fight night, I tried as hard as I could. And, you know, sometimes I just wasn't as good as the other guy. But as long as I was trying to beat him, I could live with it. There was other nights, and there wasn't many of them, but they happened where you'd quit. Something would happen and you'd quit. Something would happen and I just couldn't give it my best performance. And those are the ones that embarrass me. Those are the ones that you'd love to have back. But as far as going out and trying to beat a guy and his skills just being better, I can live with that.
All right, Joe, before we let you go, we're going to do something that's rather commonplace on a lot of wrestling shows, so hopefully you'll enjoy it. It's called the Submission Rated Tap Out Round. We fire off a whole bunch of fun questions at you, like word association. You answer with the first thing that comes to mind. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, been a few years now, and Big Nog has finally retired, so be honest with us, Chael. Did he really feed the bus a carrot?
Yes.
If you could have one pro wrestling match, give us the opponent, the event, and the stipulation of the match.
Well, I could sell out Madison Square Garden wrestling a mop if I had enough time to promote it. So I would say Chael Sonnen versus Moppy the Mop, and I would break records with it. And the only stipulation is that Chael Sonnen must be present.
I think that's Perry Saturn's mop as well, so there you go.
Ric Flair would love that. We know that you're a big fan of Brian Stann and you write him into the White House as a presidential candidate. Will you be continuing the trend of this election?
You know what? That's a true story. I wrote Brian Stann in 2008 and 2012. That's on file in Clackamas County, Oregon. You can call up the elections office and find that out. They won't tell you who cast the vote, but they will tell you that he had a vote, and it was from me.
Wow.
This time around, it's not looking good for old Brian. I'm pretty excited about Donald Trump. I think that he's running a brilliant campaign. He is running his campaign like Vince McMahon would promote a pay-per-view. And I respect every bit of it. You know, it's like Bill Clinton. Not for nothing, but Bill Clinton treated the White House like a fraternity, and it was freaking awesome.
Oh, yeah, Bill's a legend. Now, back to World Series of Fighting 23. David Branch is going for a light heavyweight title to add to his middleweight title. Do you think he does it? Does he accomplish the feat?
Oh, gosh. You know, I wish I was talking to you as a fan and not an analyst. See, I can't be a fan on this. I have to just call it straight. But it's hard for me. It's very hard because David Branch not only is a stud, but he's a veteran, and he set a very rare goal. And, you know, not only will this look good if he does achieve it, but it will look so much better in history. History will look back on this moment if he could get the light heavyweight championship so favorably that I just want it to happen for him so bad. And I can't admit that I want it to happen for him so bad. But it's hard. I tell Ray Supple that. I said, listen, Ray, I'll put on the fancy suit. I'll collect the enormous paycheck you've offered to give me. But at the end of the day, man, I'm a fan. I'm just a fan of the sport. I'm going to be excited and giddy and everything else. And it's, you know, you're giving me the best seat in the house, and I'm just a fan. So If you're asking me, man, yeah, he can do it. I don't know if he will. He's got a hard opponent, but he can do it, and I would love to see it happen.
Well, speaking of fans, you got a very special relationship with one front row Brian. He's a mystery wrapped in a riddle. So we got to ask you one thing, Chael. Does he actually look like Bruce Willis from Die Hard?
I'll tell you what, he's a very handsome man. You'd be surprised if you saw him. You go, really? So you're front row Brian. He lives the gimmick 24/7. He's done great. He came out of nowhere, and now they're mentioning his names at press conferences. Usually negatively. He hasn't quite got the shine, as we call it, yet. He's usually on the other side of it. But man, he's done great. He's a very nice guy. He just likes to stir the pot, and when people can appreciate that, they love him, and when they can't, they get mad, and he doesn't care either way.
Well, speaking of people who like to stir the pot, Chael, we know you love talking politics, so we have to ask you, Kanye West for president in 2020. What are your thoughts on the whole thing?
Man, you'd be a lot better to vote Kanye West divorced by 2020. I respect anybody that runs for the presidency in that it's not fun, it doesn't pay very well, and you're open to scrutiny. At the same time, anybody that claims they're going to be president and put themselves through that and not run is a top-level punk, and I'm quite sure that's where Kanye is going to fit in. But we'll only know by 2020. So if he does it, then good for him. And I'll take it all back, but I think he's an opportunistic prick is my prediction, and he doesn't do a damn thing with it. Like most times, like when he runs on stage and yells at a poor teenage girl because she was given him an award and he didn't agree. I don't like the guy, but I'll listen to his views and I'll listen to his politics. And if he's got the guts to put himself out there and run, I will have a totally different opinion of him.
Well, your predictions are usually pretty accurate, Chael. Finally, you've got the T-shirt line, a pizza shop, the podcast, commentating gigs at GFW, Global Force Wrestling, and World Series of Fighting. You're an ESPN analyst. What's next for the American Gangster?
Well, gentlemen, it's not easy being rich. My Bentley payment doesn't make itself. I got a very hot wife. Those aren't exactly cheap all the time. So, yeah, it takes a lot of jobs. What's next for me? I don't know. I'm kind of right where I want to be. I just had a little one. I had my first son, my first child at all, but a healthy little boy. He's
Congrats.
Getting ready for the 2036 Olympic Games, and I'm training him. So I got my plate full. I'm looking to maybe do a little bit less. In fact, maybe slow down a little bit. Initially, when I retired, I really meant it. I was going to retire. I was going to enjoy myself. I had been living out of a hotel in suitcases and eating dinner by myself in a dark room for a couple of years. And it always sounds kind of cool. When you're living a life on the road, that sounds cool until you're the one that has to do it and you're completely alone. You have no company and nobody to talk to and all that stuff. So when I retired, I really meant it. Okay, this is going to be great. I'm going to do whatever it is I wanted to do. And in about 2 weeks, I realized I don't have very many friends. I don't have any hobbies, and I am really, really miserable. So I just went back into full speed and tried to make one thing I hate, gentlemen, is a day off. I hate it. When I look at my calendar every night and I see what's been uploaded in it, if I don't have anything for the next day, I go into like a depression. I hate days off. So I'm going to stay as busy as I can, but I'm also going to try to stay local, which is one thing great about, say the podcast, for example, or even the T-shirt business, where you can work a lot of it from the office. I don't want to travel as much. That was a long answer. I think that answer was more for me than it was for you, but you just let me do a little. I just did a little self-reflection right there on your radio show, so thank you.
That's right. You can sit on our couch. We can ask you, how does that make you feel, and other questions like that. It looks like your plate just got fuller, Chael. You're obviously going to be taking on Josh Barnett at the next Metamoris. You guys can catch You're Welcome every Wednesday in America or Thursday here in Australia due to the time difference on Podcast One. Also go to badguyinc.com for awesome range of T-shirts and catch Chael Sonnen commentating at World Series of Fighting 23rd on September 18th in the US and of course the 19th in Australia. And of course you can follow him on Twitter at Sonnen. CHSONNENCH. Chael, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Now let me ask you guys a quick question since you're out that way. Is Ronda going to be able to sell out that Melbourne stadium, or is it just too big of a venue?
It's a huge stadium, Chael. So at the moment, the consensus is it's going to be very, very difficult to do. But if that Fedor fight gets added to the card, then it might be a bit easier to do.
We think it needs a sprinkle of Fedor, and I think honestly, if it was Ronda Rousey, Holly Holm, and you had Robbie Lawler and Carlos Condit, you might have a bit of a chance. But it's going to be tough to get 70,000 bodies in there.
Now, and this is a serious question. This isn't meant to come off as a jerk at all. But if Fedor fought in America, and he's never sold out a venue, and we've put him in some pretty small venues. He even fought one in California that had a 12,800 capacity, 12,800 people. He didn't fill it up. He is not a popular guy anywhere outside of Japan. I haven't even heard anybody tell me that he's that famous in Russia. That's not meant to be a knock on him. That's just where he did his work, was in Japan. When I was standing in lines with him at Starbucks in LA, that's a true story, not a human being alive knew who he was. So, serious question. If they add Fedor, and you guys don't be so close to the trees you can't see the forest just because you're fans. Does anyone give a damn? Does anyone give a damn in Australia that Fedor's there?
I think.
Go, Cass.
I think there's a lot of hardcore MMA fans here in Australia. I think as far as promotion, I'm not expecting Fedor to be getting on the mic and pulling a Chael Sonnen. I think the UFC will take care of the promotion. But I think with UFC 193, to get it into a stadium and have 70,000 crowd, you need something that's a spectacle. And I think when you've got Ronda Rousey, that's one slice of the pie. That's a spectacle. But I think you need something that's a little bit different. I think Fedor coming out of retirement, there's been so much hype already, and he hasn't even signed the contract. We don't even know if he's in the UFC. So I think if people say, okay, Fedor is coming back, and guess what? He's going to be fighting in Melbourne, Australia. I think it just adds to that whole spectacle aspect of, wow, it's a stadium. You've got Ronda Rousey, you've got Fedor, you've got Mark Hunt. And I think, when you do shows like UFC 200 and, stadium shows, you need that little bit of extra. So I think in that sense, yeah. And, there's a massive Russian community here as well in Australia. So I think it definitely can't hurt.
Yeah, and the other thing, Chael, is, sorry to interrupt you, is obviously Mark Hunt's on the card, right? And he's fighting Bigfoot Silva. That's not really a fight. I don't know if you know this or not, because you're not obviously here in Australia, but that's not really a fight the Australians are that excited about. Now, if Fedor joined the card and took over Bigfoot's spot against Mark Hunt in a rematch, now that gives the Australians a reason to get excited, because they know this is going to be a very exciting fight. And Bigfoot Silva gets moved down the card to Matt Mitchell. And just to put things into perspective for you, the last time that stadium really got sold out with a combat sports event was Global Warning, WWE. They did a pay-per-view there. Now, they had Hulk Hogan, Brock Lesnar, Triple H, The Rock down there. Hulk Hogan didn't show up, but they advertised that he'd be down there, and they sold out 56,000 seats there. UFC want to do 70,000, but they just don't have the names to do that just yet, we don't think.
Wow. All right, well, there it is. I'm happy to hear that.
We interviewed you interviewed us.
Oh, hey, fellas, there's a new one going around America. What is 6 feet tall and disappears right in front of your face?
No, what?